Hi everybody, my name is Victoria and today I will be discussing the Great Depression, artwork, along with some photography. Just to give a little background knowledge about the Great Depression, it took place between 1929 and 1939 and it definitely affected a lot of families and businesses very heavily. The economy was at its worst. And it was definitely the beginning of the worst calamity for the United States. All of this happened due to the stock market crash of 1929 in the month of October. And a result of this is a 25% unemployment rate, which does not sound too bad, but when 25% of Americans are unemployed, when you reduce that fraction and do the math, that totals out to 1 out of every 4 human beings not working. And with no job, it's very hard to support not only yourself, but if you have to support others, it's somewhat impossible. You have to always support yourself before you support someone, or it's just not going to work out. So the fact that 1 out of every 4 men or women were unemployed was definitely a turning point in America. It opened up the eyes of many people, and hence why it's the Great Depression. A lot of people were struggling, and in some of the research I was doing for photographs for this presentation, I came across some that were dated for the Great Depression, but found similar ones that said they were from 1960, 1970, but even still, no matter the time, it was still a struggle, and money is definitely a big issue. If you don't have it, it's very hard to do your daily life routines. And people were selling their children and pets for money, which definitely shows that everybody struggles and everybody has their own way of coming out of that struggle. While it is very upsetting, people had to do what they had to do back then. And 2 presidents that were in office during the time of the Great Depression tried their dearest and hardest to bring America back to being what it used to be. And a way of doing that, they did help establish a couple things. One being the Social Security Act, which gave benefits to the disabled, the blind, the retired, just to name a few. We also got the National Labor and Relations Act. This created the 40-hour work week, time and a half, child labor restrictions, which are basically if someone is in the grade range of kindergarten to 12th grade, they cannot work these amount of hours and they cannot work this kind of job. And it also created minimum wage, which many of us are very familiar with since we have a job and always fight for a raise in our minimum wage. So we also got the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which basically said the government will provide deposit insurance to banks up to $250,000. This definitely gave hope, and it restored the trust in America halfway through and a lot of time after the Great Depression. They saw that things were changing and they would not stay the same for that matter. So the Great Depression was a time period that was truly devastating, and the economy had so much sorrow and despair that a lot of it was remembered through the artwork. And the artwork contained a lot of gray colors and black. There was no lifelike colors that popped out at you and said, hey, I'm here and I'm ready to take things on. It was a lot of, I'm here and that's it. Nothing was fun back then. Nothing was the greatest time ever. So the artwork definitely shows what the struggle was like. The government actually helped fund a lot of the artwork that was produced during this time. Public Works of Art Project was the name of the corporation, or not corporation, but It was a project that the government helped fund. And around 15,000 pieces of artwork were produced, which totaled out to $1,184,000 federal money spent to help turn the image around that people live day to day for 10 years to a more colorful image. Although they were not, a lot of the pictures I'll be showing are not colorful, there are a few that do kind of give hope, and you'll see that. But if you do the math in your head or on a calculator or on your phone, you'll see that 1 million and then those 15,000 pieces of art totaled out to about $75 per artwork. So that just really shows that the government does see a point in doing this, or else they would not spend nearly $80 for every piece of artwork. They saw that people looked at these and they will remember these and they will stay with history. And history cannot change itself, especially if it is a time period like so. So the government definitely wanted to capture this in some kind of way. So the next couple slides you'll be seeing are photographs, and this one I am sure you have all seen somewhere before, whether it's online, Facebook, Tumblr, anywhere, I'm sure you have seen it. And it is by Dorothea Lange. There is no title for it that I saw, so I will say it is Mother of Two. And yes, this was taken by Dorothea Lange. As you can see, the kids in this photo are turned around, so they don't really care to recognize who is there because they don't feel the need to. This time period shows that the struggle is universal, not just in the mother herself, but the children too. The mother looks very worried that whatever around her is going on, she's very hesitant of it. The children are just not, they do not care to show their faces and recognize what is going on around them and everything like that. I did a little background information about this photo, and the mother actually has 7 children, but in this one you only see 3. If you look close enough, she is holding a baby in her hands. It looks about like a newborn. So there are 3 kids shown here. The next photo you'll see is Lunch Atop a Skyscraper. It is taken in 1932. This photo is very famous, and I'm sure if you have dined anywhere in New York in some kind of pizza place, you have seen this photo, because I surely have. It is basically just 11 men having lunch on top of an iron steel rail, and it does show that even though the Great Depression was a very rough patch for a lot of people, work was still an option, and although it wasn't much, it was still something. So it did provide some hope, like, hey, yeah, you don't have a job, but look at these 11 men. You could be them if you wanted to. You just have to go out there and try. So I think this photo definitely shows that although work was very limited, it was still an option. The other thing I noticed is that women are not shown in this photo, and that just shows that women probably did not really have the opportunity to work like the men did. This next photo is called Fishing for Change, and it was taken in the 1930s. I did not find a photographer for it, but as you can see, there are 3 boys going in the gutter for some change. Yes, although they are well dressed, you can see that the streets are empty. There's rarely anyone in there. It looks like there's a trolley in the background, but you can't really see anybody on it if there was anyone. Also, even though that these 3 boys are dressed probably a little bit better than most Americans were back then, they are still looking for money. And that just shows money was a very big issue, and it still is today. If you do not have money, it is very hard to do what you need to do for today's life. With that being said, a lot of people probably did not want to go out and show their faces throughout town because they didn't have the money, and they just felt there was no point. If there's no money, I can't do anything. So staying home was probably one of the only things they really did. The next slides you'll see are some paintings that I chose for this PowerPoint. The first one is called Apple Vendor. It is by Barbara Stevenson, and it was taken in 1933. The Great Depression definitely was an intense time for a lot of people, and the artwork of people, there's not a lot of defined detail. As you can see here, yes, we can see this is clearly a man, and he's selling apples, but he's looking down. There's no distinguish of who he is. So the lack of details definitely diminishes the individuality of a person. And with that being said, people can look at this photo and say, I sell apples. That is me. Even if you don't sell apples, you can put yourself in their shoes and see that it was still a struggle. You can see the darkness in the back with the yellow light. And that just shows, like, even in lightness, there was darkness. And it's very hard to look past all that. This next painting is probably my favorite. It is called Parkville Main Street by Gail Stockwell in 1936. This shows a striving side of town in Kansas City that was either before or after the Great Depression. And when I say before, I mean if you look at it from the before aspect, you see a town that had something going for them. But once the Great Depression hit, everything just fell apart. So this could be a remembrance of what they had and what they were going to strive for before everything fell apart. And when you look at it from the after point of view, it very much gives hope to those who lost it, along with their homes and families and their daily lives. So this painting definitely shows that America can be rebuilt. And if you look at it at a deeper level, you can see in the background that it's a little bit darker and gloomy right behind the trees. And if you think about it, that could actually be Hooverville. And a Hooverville is actually just a town built by homeless people. So it could be a striving city, a striving town, a little shopping center, and then what they used to have. When you look at it that way, it definitely lets you appreciate what is being shown in this photo. The last painting I will be showing is actually a drawing, I'm sorry. This drawing is called On the East River by Nikolai Sikovinsky. It was drawn in 1934, and it shows just a regular businessman and a casual man, and they are both on the same level. Nobody looks higher than the other. They are both in distress. They both look anxious, and they both look very tired and hungry. This just goes to show that any social class could have been suffering the same way, and it may have been a little hard to recognize that at first due to the fact that somebody who was more wealthier, could look at somebody who didn't have anything and say they didn't change, but somebody who didn't have much could look at somebody who had a lot and say they're the same as me. And it just takes a while for people to look at that and see what is really going on. So what do these paintings and pictures have to do with today, and why do they still relate? America was a very different country back then, for the Great Depression era anyway. And it changed the lives of many Americans. Artists really help generate hope in a new light, and it helps appreciate what we have today. The art definitely shows the dismay and lifeless attributes that came about the Great Depression, and without these ideas and concepts of what people have went through, we wouldn't have some art today. And that's all I have. Thank you. This is my works cited.